Hey guys, this is Akita Hero here, and this is me bringing you my first ever deck profile on my Bermuda Triangle deck. This is a reindeer build, so it's not overly expensive. Your main grade 3s are cheap, they're common, so it's not that hard a deck to build. It's really fun to play with, very consistent. I win, I'd say, 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the games I play with this, so it tends to do fairly well. Alright, let's just jump into this with the grade 0s, shall we? First, your starter, Bermuda Triangle Cadet Waddell. She's very good for this deck because when a grade 1 rides her, she can move to the rear circle. And anytime you want, there's no cost. All you have to do is put her back into the soul, and you can bounce one of your rear guards back to your hand. It may not sound like much, but it enables a lot of draw power with this deck. So that's your starter. I run a second Waddell in the deck so I can use its effect whenever I want. I draw it, I play it, I move it to soul. So you may be thinking, there's quite a lot of moving to soul. Mega Blast would be good. I tried that, but unfortunately you counter blast a lot in this deck, so Mega Blasting, not so much. Okay, now let's move on to the trigger lineup. I use 3 Drive Quartet Shoot Blues, 3 Comical Rainies, so that's 6 critical in the deck. I don't run 8, I only run 6. I run 2 draws because they're draw triggers, and plus it's a Drive Quartet. So that really adds up to the Drive Quartet lineup. Then I run 4 Rosette stand triggers. The only reason I run these and not 8 and 4 like I normally do is because this deck has a lot of draw power. I mean a lot of draw power. 90% of the time I either get to the bottom of my deck or I deck out. That's one of the ways I end up losing. So stand triggers are quite useful. They give me an extra chance to attack. That means an extra chance to bounce back to my units, so extra draw power with that. And then obviously 4 hills. I do have the Drive Quartet lineup there. Not for their usefulness, because they're not very useful, but just in case, like if my hand is that bad, I'm drawing nothing but triggers and these guys, grade 0s, I can use these because, for instance, let me find the order of which they gain power. Oh, there is an order. Okay, Shoot Blue gains power when Bubbling is on the field. Bubbling gains power when Rosette is on the field, and Rosette gains power when Flows is on the field, and then Flows gains power when Shoot Blue is on the field. So it's one big lineup. If you have all 4 out, they're at 7k each permanently, not even during, like, not only during your turn, during your opponent's turn as well. They're at 7k when the correct one is out. So that could be useful if the game is going really bad. Alright, that's it for grade 0s. Let's move on to grade 1s. I have 4 vanilla 8k Mermaid Idol Sednas because you kind of need them. I run 2 Pearlays, Pearl Sisters Pearlays. I want to make this free, but I haven't quite gotten hold of a third or play tested it, so 2's okay for now. I run 2 Prism of Water Martoas, extra draw power, which is basically your Dark Cat. 2 Turquoise Blue Terranias. She's really good. She may only be a 5k boost, but she gives the ability of, if the attack hits, that she boosts. Well, it has to hit a Vanguard, I think. Yeah, it has to hit the Vanguard when it boosts. If you do, you can Soul Blast 2 and bounce a unit back to your hand. That adds a bit more pressure late game for if their Vanguard only has 10,000, like most Vanguards. I mean, except, you know, Cross Rise or Persona Blast ones, Ride Chain ones, things like that. if I put this behind a 10k boost, or even behind my 11k beater, that can get to 16. But if I put it behind a 10k, that's 15. They're going to want to guard 10 because they're not going to want you to bounce back. And then, last but not least, to finish up the grade 1s, 3 perfect guards. Mermaid Idol Ellies. I would run 4, but I don't really recommend it since there's so much draw power in the deck. You're going to get these really quickly, pretty much. I've tried 4, didn't quite work out. I kept drawing them, so there was just no point overdrawing them. Alright, well that's it for the grade 1s. Move on to grade 2s, shall we? Yep, I've got 2 Aquas, your vanilla 10k. Only reason I run 2 of them is because I run 2 of these, Mermaid Idol Flute. She's your 11k beater if you have 4 or more rear guards, and that's quite common to have with this build of my deck. I tend to have a lot of rear guards out at one point, tend to keep them out. If not, I can replace them because there's a lot of draw power. So she's normally all the time at 11k. So like I said, her and the 5k behind, that's 16. That's a really good number. Obviously with a 7 behind or even the 8, that's 18, 19, magic number for cross rides. Then I have 3 Pearl Sisters per La. She's the one your opponent really wants to guard. She's a 9k grade 2. When she hits the opponent's Vanguard, I do believe, yep, has to hit the Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1 and bounce a unit back. So it's a really cheap cost, really easy to use. A lot of people guard it. They are scared of this effect. They guard it, but then they might not guard enough for your Vanguard attack, for instance. So that's good. And then to really sweeten this deck up, I run 1, 2, 3, 4 Girls Rock Rio. I've only got 1 in SP, unfortunately, but it's really beautiful, that one. These girls are amazing. When they bounce back to their hand, you can counterblast 1, soul charge 1, and then draw a card. So that is increasing your soul by 1 and adding a +2 to your hand. If you're using Perla, and for instance you played a Perlay, Perlay's effect gives Perla an extra ability for the turn. So if her attack hits, not only can you Soul Blast 1 and draw a card, you can also Soul Charge 1 and draw a card. Not draw a card, sorry, bounce the unit back with her. You can Soul Charge 1 and draw a card with her effect. So in essential, if you attack and hit with her and then bounce Rio back, and you've played a Perlay this turn, you could Soul Charge 1, draw a card, Soul Blast 1, you return her, Counterblast, Soul Charge and draw. So in essence, you're increasing your soul power by 1 because you Soul Charged with her and her, but you Soul Blast with her. You increase your soul by 1 and your hand size by 3. That is some good card advantage. I have to admit, it is very good. It always pays off. When this deck is working, I essentially have a good 8 to 10 cards in hand at one point every turn. Even though I've played cards, I've guarded, things like that, I usually end up with about 10 cards in my hand when this deck is really working well. Alright, now let's move on to your grade 3s. This is your main Vanguard of this deck. I would run 4, but I haven't quite got the space due to my lineup. Since I run 8 grade 3s, I have 3 Velvet Voice Reindeers. These ones are amazing. They're not so good late game because if you've rinsed through quite a few of your grade 3s, her effect ain't going to have that much impact, but it does add more pressure in this deck. When she's on the Vanguard and you twin drive with her with her attack, if you drive check a grade 3, you can return a unit to your hand and call a unit from your hand to an open rear circle. So for instance, you have that and a Rio out. Rio's already attacked. they've guarded, whatever, doesn't matter. Her attack, I drive check a grade 3. I can return Rio to my hand, activating Rio's effects of Counterblast, Soul Charge and Draw, and if I have nothing better in my hand, I can just call Rio again. And then, say for instance, she has an 8k boost that is already rested because of the first attack. Second drive check, I either get another grade 3 or a stand trigger. I can just stand that back up for another attack. And for instance, if that's a 10k vanilla or your 11k, that's another good attack ready. So that's the reason I use stand triggers as well, because essentially her effect gives you a standing effect. So if she attacks, you've got nothing to bounce back that's useful, like Rio or your Mermaid Idol, your Rainbow Light Kareen, your grade 3. I'll show that off in a sec. You can always bounce back your vanilla, call it again. Like if it's already attacked once before, you can bounce it back to your hand and then just call it again. So it's basically her effect turns your grade 3s into stand triggers, which is amazing. So that's 3 of them. Then you have your Rainbow Light Kareens. These girls have the exact same effect as Girls Rock Rio. They're just grade 3 10Ks. I don't need to explain anymore with that. And then last but not least, finish up with 2 Top Idol Flores. She has the same effect as Perla. If the attack hits, but it doesn't need to hit the Vanguard, so this can attack a rear guard. If the attack hits, you can Soul Blast 2, not 1, to bounce the unit back to your hand. My favourite lineup of this entire deck with a Terrania there, and it doesn't matter what's here, let's just say 2 8k vanillas. This is my favourite lineup of this deck because you attack with 15. If they don't guard it, you can bounce back if you want to with her effect. Sorry about that. But they will probably guard it since they don't want you to bounce back. Then you can attack for 18, a magic number. Even if they guard it, you can get a grade 3. And if you do, you can bounce back Kareen using her effect to counterblast, soul charge and draw, and just call her again for another attack. She's standing only on 10k, but she can attack a rear guard or something. Then you just attack with that again, for instance. Then you can attack with Flores. If that attack hits, because it's again magic 18, they're going to need at least 15 to guard that really. If the attack hits, you could just bounce back Kareen again, drawing more cards. It's such a draw heavy deck. Like I said, if the match lasts a long time, I usually end up decking out or getting right to the bottom of my deck. And as well, if she's on the Vanguard, if I know I haven't got many grade 3s left because it's late game, I just ride a Flores instead. There's no difference except add more pressure with her effect of if it hits, I can Soul Blast and bounce the unit back. So that's always a good backup plan. This deck will be adjusted when the full set of the next Divas comes out in Dazzling Divas. There are a lot of cards in that set I want to use. For instance, the Break Ride is amazing. Obviously there's the reprint of Sedna and Ellie's, which is awesome. There are a lot of units that, when they're bounced back to their hand, I can add 4,000 to another unit. So I don't always have to bounce back a Rio or Kareen to get a bonus. I can always bounce back one of my grade 1s, for example. Or I think the draw trigger does that as well, or something called a stand trigger. So I could bounce them back and add 4,000 to my Vanguard or another unit that I want to attack with. Things like that. So it's not going to be so much draw heavy, so I might not have that many stands, I'll have more draws, but at the moment, the way the deck is, there's a lot of draw power. I don't need many draw triggers, I don't need 4 perfect cards, I only run 3, I seem to do perfectly fine with 3. But that's my deck profile on my Bermuda Triangles. If you have any questions or any comments, don't hesitate, comment section is right below, so there's that. Thank you for watching and have a good day. Bye bye now.